Well, on the line from Canada is Tracy Shuchart. Tracy is an expert in the energy and commodities markets. She's had prior experience in the Chicago Board of Trade. She manages an energy and commodities portfolio and publishes a newsletter on the energy sector. And Tracy joins me online from Canada. In fact, I think she's 2 hours from Quebec. Tracy, for the first time here, thank you for your time. Very grateful to get input from someone not caught up in this latest religion. What do you make of the current state of play? Oil, gas, coal, shale?
Well, I mean, all we have to do is look at the current energy crisis in the UK and Europe right now. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. It's just bad energy policy, trying to transition too fast. And we're finding out what happens when the sun doesn't shine or the wind doesn't blow. Well, we're finding that out right now and very quickly.
You've written about this ESG standard that's now an impost on the financial world. ESG stands for environmental, social and governance, where investors and financiers are applying these non-financial factors, so-called climate change, and most of the forecasts for the last many years have been wide of the mark. As you go around your daily life, and you and I, Tracy, can you see climate change threatening you to the point of extinction?
Well, obviously not. And I don't want to, I've always said I don't mind renewables, but I do mind bad energy policy, and that's what we're having right now.
Yes. I mean, what happens if banks refuse to fund oil and coal projects and financing is difficult? I mean, in your country, like ours, even if you had the finance, new exploration for gas and coal and oil or uranium have to get government approvals. We've got a New South Wales government policy under a Greenie treasurer here who's supposed to be liberal, 100% renewables, he says. So how do these fossil fuel projects get off the ground?
Well, and that's the problem. And that what we've been seeing for the last years, for the last 7 years, actually, is severe investment, right? We have CapEx. No oil companies can't get the funding they need. So, and investors are shying away because the banks aren't funding. And so, companies have had to focus on investor returns via dividends and stock buybacks, really just
absolutely. See, I mean, so what? This is your field. What is the consequence for world energy markets and supply as a result of this talk, or do we just accept that this is just a talk fest? It's going to go nowhere, and it'll be back to square one.
Well, it's a disaster. And we're finding that out right now, again, when we look at the energy crisis in Europe. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. And the crazy thing is that we're keep looking to pursue these policies. I mean, you couldn't have COP26 at a worse possible time, right? When you're having an energy crisis in Europe, and that's having secondary effects in, say, the metals markets and in the fertilizer industry, which is having tertiary effects in the meatpacking industry. So this doesn't just affect one industry. This is a domino effect that's happening right now globally, and we see countries still continuing to pursue bad energy policy.
Absolutely. And then, of course, everyone goes on about China, don't they? And yet no one tells you China is the predominant world supplier of solar panels and wind turbines. They've got to be laughing at us, haven't they?
Well, absolutely. And the thing is you have to realize, to make those solar panels, right? Do you know how much plastic and silicon is involved, which requires fossil fuels? Or if you look at wind turbines, right? They're steel, copper, resin, plastic. All these things require massive amounts of fossil fuels just to produce. And then when you're done, there's no way to recycle these things. They end up in landfills.
Absolutely.
It's
how do you tell
bad energy policy?
Absolutely fantastic. How do you tell a coal miner in the Hunter Valley that his thermal coal price, which produces electricity, is the best in the world? It's gone up 185% since January, but Glasgow wants to wipe out thermal coal, our metallurgical coal, coking, used in the process of creating coke necessary for iron and steel making, used, of course, in the building wind turbines. So what happens to that? How do you explain to a voter in the Hunter Valley that these people in Glasgow are trying to wipe you out?
Well, they absolutely are. And then, if you look at China, which you've already talked about, has already backed out of COP26. And you know what else they did quietly this week is they changed their 14th five-year plan because they're having an energy crisis, right? And they're having blackouts. So they actually just changed their plan to include, and I quote, vigorously pursue clean coal.
Oh,
So,
no. Yes.
China's laughing at everybody.
Yes, they are. See, when at home, and you're the same there in Canada, America here, you've got companies where major shareholders, I don't think they read, I don't think they do any research, they've gone green. So there's corporates have got a real problem here. What would your advice be to them?
Well, I mean, everybody's looking at green, quote unquote green, but really it's kind of a loose term, right? Because even if we look at financial investments right now, as far as if you look at a bunch of these ESG investment funds, if you actually look what's in those baskets, it's mostly big tech companies that are high polluters.
That's it.
and oil companies. That's it. Right? So this ESG is kind of a farce, right? It seems to be a word that people like, a moniker, right? That they are pushing with little behind it, to be honest.
Quite. But see, people are frightened to speak up, aren't they? I mean, this new religion, the new cult is net zero emissions. So here we are. First time we've spoken to you, we'll speak to you again. Just tell us, Tracy, you're talking to people right across Australia. What do you say to them as they're being washed? This stuff's washing all over them. Net zero carbon dioxide emissions. What's your final comment to them?
Well, first of all, net zero is next to impossible, right? And if you look at all the hypocrisy as far as that is concerned, I mean, if you want all of this energy transition, you're going to need a lot of fossil fuels to produce these things. There's no way to recycle these things. We're trying to transition way too fast. And they're not looking at things that are reasonable, like natural gas, right? Which is cheap. Well, it's very expensive right now, but generally cheap, a great transition fuel, provides a lot of jobs in the industry. I mean, Australia, just like Canada, there's a lot of jobs in the fossil fuel industry with very little jobs in energy transition. Yeah,
absolutely. Just mowing. Oh, there are some jobs. You mow the lawns underneath the wind turbines. That's about what you do. Tracy, great to talk to you. We hope we can talk again. That's Tracy Shuchart. Now, she's an expert on the energies and commodities, and you can follow her on Twitter at CHIGIRL, at CHIGIRL. Talk again, Tracy. We're very grateful. Thank you for your time.